Welcome back to another paint class. Today, I know y'all are probably thinking all she has is round forms. I do have some rectangle shaped boards, but they're a little bit large, or they're super small. I've got to get some more. We're going to work on this one today. We're going to put a cluster of grapes is the plan. Kind of a stone background. And if everything goes well, I'm kind of leaning towards the font or the saying how sweet it is, and with a few musical notes dancing around. That's kind of what I'm thinking. We'll see how it flows out. All right, off camera, I mixed my colors. We're doing the background, so I took some white and put just a tad bit of brown in it to get a beige color. Here is the brown. It's been watered down because we're going to use that as a part of a stain. And then I took that same brown and added white, but I wanted it to be a few shades darker than the background here. And you'll see. I talked about it in one of my videos of kind of doing that stone look or granite look background, but we're going to do it with a paintbrush today. So, and this is a side note, as much as I work in my garden and paint, I wash my hands quite a bit so they get dry, and I don't like that. But when you are painting, you want to make sure your hands are washed with soap and water so there's no lotion, because what happens is while you're bearing down, that lotion is getting on your surface, and the paint won't cover it very well. You'll notice on your backgrounds or the subject you're painting on that it's kind of splotchy, so you keep painting over it thinking, what's wrong with this? And sure enough, it's the oil from the lotion. So there's a little tidbit. Okay, I'm going to use my number 1-inch brush to do the background like I've done before, making sure it's damp and no water in this area here. We're going to start off with this light beige color. And cover it completely, just with the beige. And again, I need to slow down, I'm sorry. You're just doing strokes back and forth, so you take care of all those ridges of paint that will show up when you're doing a background. Just short strokes back and forth. And I know a lot of folks say, you go with the grain of the wood, which actually is kind of like this. But in this case, when we're doing a background like this, it's okay. Just as long as you try to keep your strokes fairly straight. And it takes out all those paint ridges. If you ever find that you've got a paint ridge and it's dry, just take a little sandpaper, lightly sand over it, and then paint that same color, that background color, right over that spot, and it'll be okay. Just getting the outside edge a little bit. And when I finish my work, if it's anything that I'm going to sell or give away, I always paint the back side of it. And then sometimes I even splatter the back side just to give it that finished look, as well as the sides. Like in this case, this board is thick, and if I was making this for a project or for an order, I would definitely paint the sides as well as the back. And that would be 2 coats on the back as well. Some people think that might be wasting paint, but it just gives it that final finished look. I have purchased paintings before, signs on wood that I thought was just so cute, and I didn't want to try to make it myself, and they didn't paint the backside of it. And I don't know why, but that just kind of felt like it was not a finished project. Okay. I think all my lines, I don't have any ridges of paint. And all my lines are pretty straight. Just going back over it again, it's starting to dry. I'm gonna check the edges, because a lot of times we miss the edge spots. So we'll just turn this around, take a look, see if I've got all the edges pretty good. Now I do remember getting this piece of wood, and I want to say this is probably a 14-inch round, from Lowe's. Lowe's has an incredible, well, Home Depot does too, but Lowe's really does have a good selection of different types of wood cuts, and it's decent wood where you don't really have to do much sanding to it at all. If you're working on a project that you're going to sell, I suggest that you do sand that project, no matter what. Give yourself a nice, clean, smooth surface to work on, as well as your edges, because you definitely don't want your client buying a piece of artwork from you and get a splinter in their finger. So it's a good habit to be in, to sand your surfaces. Okay, I think that's good. We're gonna let that dry for a minute. All right, that first coat dried, and so I did a second coat on top. That way we've got good coverage. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do these edges so I can kind of give y'all a little tip on that. So when I'm doing an edge, I usually hold it, well, way before I was a bank teller, I worked for banks, I was a waitress. So you can hold the board with your hand like this, if you have a round board like I do, to get those edges. And you're going to fill your 1-inch brush up, and you're going to get paint right on that edge. Nice, good coverage. But you don't forget, come at the very top and get any ridge of paint before it dries, and then at the same thing at the bottom. Get any ridge of paint, because anytime you're doing a side, because the bristles go up, you're going to get some paint there. So it's just a good habit to be in, to come up at the top, lightly go over it, and at the bottom. That way you don't have big old clumps of ridges on the edge. Now turning my board, I'm gonna get this edge over here. Nice, good strokes. And again, go on top, wipe off that edge with your brush. That way you get good coverage and no ridges. Again at the top and at the bottom. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. I'll be back. Okay, it's had time to dry. Might still feel a little bit tacky, but I think we'll be all right with the background we're gonna do. Okay, we're gonna use this brown stain I made, basically with just water. Again, this is another good time when you're doing a stain. You could add the glaze, paint medium to it, and you won't lose your pigment color by using a glaze and water. But some of you might not have glaze, so I'm going to show you how it will still work using just watered down brown paint. Nice and wet. This is like definitely a jello consistency. Okay. Now I've got this large brush here. Excuse me. All right. Got this large brush. I'm going to use it to be my pouncy or dancing brush. If you don't have a large, I think it's called a filbert brush, and it's probably a good number 8 size, maybe a number 10. If you don't have one of these, that's okay. You can use your regular dancing brush. It just takes a little bit longer, or you could probably, if you have a 1-inch brush, you could, I'm sure you could do close to the same thing that I'm doing with this one. Again, that being your 1-inch brush. All right, what we're going to do is make sure this brush is damp and it's not got any drips here on the silver. I'm going to grab some of that watered down brown paint, and all I'm going to do is basically do some splotches. Rinse my brush, dry it off, just so this kind of looks like maybe a Tuscan wall. It just really needs to be more of a hint of it than being real strong like that. So before it dries, I'm rinsing my brush, making sure it has water on it or it's damp. And I'm just going to dance that around a little bit, kind of coming up and down like a line of mountains, up and down. Hadn't dried yet, so I'll turn my board a little bit. It's that wispy look, like we've talked about before in class, kind of like a mountains or excuse me, like clouds. And again, that's a little stronger than what I want. So I'll rinse my brush, make sure it's damp, and then just pounce over that area just to take away some of that extra paint. Of course, this is going to take a little bit longer to dry, you know, maybe 10 minutes, not a big deal. Got some faded areas, and then you have a little bit of paint, and then some more faded areas. You can bring some of that out, because the grapes are going to be about in the center. A little bit of paint, that very watered down brown. Finish off going around my circle here. Rinse my brush, dry it off. It's just dancing it around till you're happy with it. Rinse my brush, dry it off. If y'all are enjoying these paint classes, it'd really help out to like and subscribe. Even share them with a friend. You know, once you learn how to paint, especially if you're at retirement age like me, this is a good therapy. If you're sitting at home, you need to learn, you need to learn something new. One, it makes you feel better, encourages yourself. A lot of times the family and friends get a kick out of it. They make great gifts. But like I've said before in the past, I really enjoy sitting and painting and listening to a good teacher, or some beautiful music, and creating. All right, I think I've messed with it long enough in that area. Well, I see one little spot there. I'll break that up a little bit with a damp, clean brush before it completely dries. I hope that shows up really well on camera. I'm really surprised. A lot of these things are showing up a lot more than what I think. Okay. Now, we don't have to wait till that completely dries to do this next step. You want to take that liner brush. You can either use a script brush or a mid-liner brush. This is, again, a number 2. And let's see if I can get you to be able to see it. If you're new to the channel, it's just it's a what I call a mid-liner. Liner script brushes are super long and they're great. But I've been enjoying working with this mid-liner brush. It's not a very big brush, but it comes in handy for all the things you want to do. Okay, you want to, that medium brown color that we did, make sure that it's really wet. I'm gonna add a little bit more water to it since it's been kind of sitting there. And we're gonna add some veins to this background. And it's still not quite wet enough. Of course, it has that white in there. And you know, if you mix white with anything, yeah, that white paint usually is very thick. Okay. That's getting close to Jell-O consistency. Again, when you're using a liner brush, you want to get you some paint on that brush. And then before you use it on your surface, twirl it off. Again, fill it up with paint and then twirl it off. That way it's nice and thin and it brings those bristles together as a point. And all we're going to do is, this is a good time to have just curvy lines. I think that's going to be dark enough. Let's try it with the, well, we can use both. That background watered down brown that we were using for the splotches and that medium brown. I like them both on there. And a vein is just that wild crazy line, and then have another one coming out from it. Let's do that again. Fill up your brush, twirl it off, and we're just going to let this, you can think of it like a winding river maybe, tree branch. Coming up from the edge. Just try to make, when you put that extra branch in there, You want the main vein to not, in other words, don't bring in that extra branch that's in there and have it hanging off the edge of the other side. If it goes like that, just make that main vein a little thicker. All right, let's grab a little bit of this light color. Once that lighter color dries, it'll show up a little bit better. That's another thing about acrylic paint, latex paint as well. Once it dries, it usually dries I wouldn't say a complete shade more, but it does dry darker. Acrylic paint, once it dries, it's always a little bit darker. All right, going into that watered down brown. And see, I didn't twirl that off, so it made it awfully thick. And I'm gonna leave it. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take another one off of that area. Twirling it off. I want to make sure that vein is a little bit bigger there. All right. Going into that dark brown paint again, twirl it off. See if we can add a little bit more to this one. And since I've got two super dark ones there that are fairly thick, I'll try to make sense of it and add a big one here as well. The way I'm doing the bigger ones is not twirling off. That way, there we go. And if you notice here, the lighter color one, it's going towards the background now, which to me looks great. All right, let's get a little bit, few more of the light or the medium color brown that we made. Again, this one here. Grabbing that medium brown. And let's put one next to that one. We need some medium brown up in this area. Okay, we're going to let that dry for a moment. Okay, finishing off this background. Those veins have had an opportunity to dry. I made a few of them a little bit thicker in certain areas, just to give it a little bit more interest. So we have the light veining, we have the dark, and then we have a little bit of a thickness to some of the veins, or the cracks, or the tree limbs. Now, we could call it done almost, and we're going to go ahead and splatter this now, because a lot of times on granite, stone, you have dots. But if you go in there and use the tip of your brush, like I showed you in one of the videos, to make a dot, I think it was for the bird's eye, it's too perfect. So using your damp toothbrush, old toothbrush, you want to grab some of this dark watered down brown. And the splatters, we really kind of need them unusual shapes. So this, we're really filling up the toothbrush. And then we're going to splatter. And I really want it to show up with some drips. Probably not that big of a drip. There we go. See how that's coming about. So we'll fix those two big drips. It's one thing about painting. There's just not a whole lot you can go wrong that you can't fix. All I did was take my brush, pull that drip up. Because those veins are dry, they're not going to move. Pull that drip up, rinse my brush, and just tap that area just in case. There we go. I like the rest of them. If we could just get it to move a little bit more, let's see if we can do that. Grabbing my mid liner brush, and I had a dab of water on there. There we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Just to kind of give it a little extra something. You don't have to do it all over. But we still have our plain splatter. But let's add, let's say about right here. We'll add a little puddle of water. Using the mid liner brush or the script brush, grab up some of that watered down brown, and let's just touch that on there. And then with the water being on there, it kind of bleeds a little bit. Now if I leave that be, it'll dry just pretty much like that. And I'm happy with that. Now if I pick up my board and turn it, it's gonna run. I'm not too sure I want that look. Oh, as old Bob Ross said, that's working out so well, let's do another one. Okay, you can grab any of your brushes. The number 5 round will work, but I'm grabbing this filbert brush and adding a little bit of more water. Just dabbing some water puddles on here. And let's grab some of the brown, dark brown watered down paint. And all I'm doing is just dabbing. It's almost like ink is running. I guess I could have left those 2 dots and just played with them. All right. What do you think, guys? You think we need a little bit down here too? Why not? All right, one more time. Get a little bit of water. Let's drip it on here. It's a decent puddle. Let's grab a little bit of that brown using the mid liner brush or script brush and just fill up those water puddles is what I'm doing, I'm just touching the water puddles with my brush. And then just kind of helping it stream out a little bit. Now, there's always a now, isn't there? I probably should just hush. If you're working on a bad piece of board, like I was with the ornaments, and you do all this water technique, it's going to bring up that tooth of that grain. It's gonna move. So if it's a bad piece of wood, I probably wouldn't do all this extra water to it. But this is a good piece of wood. All this has caused it to become a little bit rough, but that's okay. We can still work with it. But if it's a really bad piece of wood and you do all this water stuff, which it's really kind of pretty. It reminds me of pour paint, which I've done that many times. But if it starts bringing up the tooth, where, in other words, the tooth of the wood will catch your paintbrush when you're painting, you need to go ahead and sand that little piece down, whatever's coming up. Sand it down lightly, put a little background color back on it, and you should be good to go. All right. Yeah, that's gonna take a few minutes to dry. But I like that. It's working in threes. That's good. We're gonna let it dry. Be right back, guys.